morning, everybody. Thanks a lot, Professor Saab, for inviting us, respected Her Excellency, and all the respected citizens of Thailand. What an honor to be on the same earth where such great people walked. Ravita Tagore, you spoke about. It reminded me of a very interesting trivia between Ravita Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi. Both of them were very punctual about time. And it was very easy to irritate Mahatma Gandhi even if you were 1 minute delayed. That's why he always kept a watch with him. And so was Ravita Tagore. So once Mahatma Gandhi went to meet Thakur Sahab in his residence in Kolkata, in Shanti Niketan. But then Mahatma Gandhi had to wait for 5 minutes. Tagore was delayed by 5 minutes. And Gandhiji couldn't believe it. So when Tagore came out, he said, how can you get late by 5 minutes? So he said, you know, I have long hair. And it takes time to, comb them, and you came uninvited. You suddenly dropped a message that I am reaching in half an hour. I had two choices, either to upset you by getting late by 5 minutes or show you my unkempt hair and hurt your sensibilities. So I chose not to hurt your sensibilities. Only a poet can talk like that. But this is the DNA of India. Very often people say that Indians are very tolerant people, which is wrong. It's a very Western way of looking. Tolerance is a very Western concept. It's not an Eastern concept. Even in Thailand, since I've come here many times, and I've learned the difference between West and East is primarily about these two words, tolerance or acceptance. West tolerates others. East accepts others. To put it in short, the entire Eastern way of living is about oneness. Whereas the entire, and please I'm not getting into criticism, it's my analysis what I have learned. Because the entire Western philosophy or the Western civilization has evolved by capturing other continents, other lands. The entire Vikings, if you see the entire history, and they were brave men, they were really, really brave people. And that's why you see going deep inside the sea and figuring out what's inside the sea, going up in the sky to the moon. This is coming from that adventurous nature. And this entire adventure was about physical bodies, the physicality of the world. So they went on an adventure of capturing other lands. Nobody from the East colonized the West. It was the West which was colonizing the East and Africa and other countries. And whereas the entire Eastern evolution, if you see, was about exploring minds and exploring life. So there is a very distinct divide. There is a very, very clear-cut black and white difference between the West thinks and the way East thinks. And which is why you will find that the theory about death, yesterday I was talking to some people, the Tibet, they specialized in death. In India, we specialized in understanding life and beyond. In the East, you will find we focused more on family structure, the growth, together growth, the co-growth. Whereas the West primarily focused on individual growth. So two different stories developed in the world. And And whatever collective growth of the world has happened when both of these have taken the best from each other. But unfortunately, in the modern world, which we call the global world, actually I find this globalized world more divisive than when we were not global. At least we were living peacefully in each other's world. We were happy in our own home. But now with the global world, everybody is trying to enter everybody else's home and trying to tell them what is right for them. That's exactly is the problem with Kashmir. That's the problem with any conflict zone in the world. Others are trying to tell what is right for you. Whereas your righteousness evolves from your own circumstances. So just to begin from there, I am standing here to speak on Kashmir diaspora and the way forward. I have to begin from what is Kashmir. Kashmir primarily was a global university. It was a knowledge center. If you wanted to specialize in anything, you go to Kashmir. And that's why, I don't know how many of you know, the entire concept of university started in India. The world's most ancient and perhaps the best 11 or 12, don't please hold me for the number, I think 11. 11 greatest of the universities started in India, which were later on destroyed and burned by a lot of invaders. That's why the Greece, which everybody talks about, but people ignore a very important point, that the Greeks themselves called Kashmir the cradle of civilization. It was impossible to think about the global civilization without Kashmir. And the principal philosophy of Kashmir is primarily on two pillars. Three, I would say. Pillar number one, what we call Shaivism, Shiva. Now Shiva's philosophy is of oneness, which is later it came to be known as Advaita. And at the same time, another great philosophy which evolved was Buddhism. Now Buddhism evolved after almost 1,000 years of debate between people who believed in Shaivism and people who were evolving as Buddhists. I am not getting into the religious aspects, I am talking purely from philosophical point of view. And then the essence came out, and that's why you will find that it is a super specialization of Shaivism, which believes that there are no others in the world. There is no otherness. In fact, Maharshi Ramana, who was a great Advaita philosopher or a guru or a sage, rishi, when a BBC correspondent asked him how to treat others, and it was supposed to be a long 2-hour-long interview, he had taken permission to do a long 2-hour-long interview. The first question was how to treat others. Maharshi Ramana said, there are no others. And the interview ended. There was nothing left to be questioned after that. And the same philosophy you will find in the Buddhism, in Jainism, all the 4 great religions. You must know that India is the only land in the world, only society in the world, which has given birth to the world's 4 most peaceful religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism and Sikhism. And later on, whoever came to India, with whichever faith they belonged to, whether it was Islam, whether it was Christianity, whether it was Parsis, whoever came, they became part of us. And this comes from the belief, which later on became Jainism, from a concept called Anekantvad. And you'll be surprised to know, this also evolved in Kashmir, which means that there are millions of ways, there are plethora of ways to reach the truth. Negating anybody else's path to truth is violence. Violence was never about, in Hindu philosophy, violence was never treated as about killing animals, which is a very modern Western concept. And that is also because of a lot of NGO activism. But the true meaning of violence is saying that the way you want to live your life, the way you want to approach truth is wrong. That is violence. And all this evolved in Kashmir. So at the same time when Shaivism evolved, another philosophy, so oneness, that is Shaivism. Another philosophy which evolved in Kashmir was about what is now known as Saraswati, which believed that for humanity to survive, you need soul. And what is that soul? What is a society? Who are we? We are sitting here. What are we doing here together? Think deeply, what is humanity? Everybody talks about humanity, but what is humanity? Humanity is not breathing and walking like human beings. It is being together and evolving through diversity. And that diversity is possible only when wisdom, poetry, music, culture, literature, all these things evolve. And that's the philosophy which comes from the great deity called Saraswati. And which is why in Kashmir you also had a university called Sharda Vidyapeeth, which is basically one of the oldest universities, now destroyed and now not even a part of India anymore. And then the third thing which evolved much later was Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Yoga, all of you must have heard yoga, which is also should be called yoga, but less for the ease of listeners, let's call it yoga. The meaning of yoga is union, addition. When you add two things, then only it is yoga. Yoga was never physical exercise. Patanjali's sutras don't even talk about exercises, which is a very modern way to popularize it. It came much later, I think 300-400 years ago, while British people were in India. Yoga simply means union. And this union is between human beings and the nature, human beings and the cosmos, and your physical manifestation and internal manifestation. When these things combine, then only yoga is possible. And if you put all these things together, the sum total of Shaivism, Saraswati and yoga is what we broadly call spirituality. Spirituality is nothing but your inner dialogue, your transaction between you and the cosmic truth, and which ultimately boils down to that all of us are one. This is Kashmir for me. And this Kashmir ultimately was destroyed by people who say there is no oneness. Everybody is other. Anybody who doesn't think like me is other. They came and they said, no, you do not believe in our faith and therefore you are others. This is very simply speaking, very philosophically speaking, is the problem with Kashmir. So there is a land which was cradle of civilization, which believed there are no others, and because some people were persecuted in Iran and Iraq, and they came to Kashmir to take refuge because Kashmir believed there are no others, and later on they said, because you do not believe in our faith, therefore we are going to destroy you, kill you. And today a land which gave birth to oneness, which is Shaivism, art, literature, culture, diversity should be the soul of a society, Saraswati. And third, yoga, the union, addition of everybody becoming one. Today that land, which basically was Hindu philosophy, has hardly any Hindus in that land. This is the truth. Now, we have to move ahead of this truth. So what can Kashmiri diaspora do? I have few suggestions. I am no teacher, I am no leader, I am just a storyteller. I told a story to tell the world what happens when terrorism wins over humanity. The only purpose of the film was to show the real face of terrorism and to impress upon the world that the biggest challenge to humanity, the biggest enemy of humanity is terrorism. Like Pallavi was saying, a lot of people are oppressed in this world, but nobody picks up guns. This entire people talk about humanity and human rights, but we have to understand that no human rights are possible if some people are holding guns. Then the other people also will have to come in their own defense. So here are a couple of things I want to tell you, if not just Kashmiri Pandit diaspora, but for the humanity, what we can do together. First thing is, we'll have to understand the purpose of globalization. The purpose of globalization was commercial globalization. But slowly it is becoming a cultural globalization, which is to make the culture of the world uniform. And it suits capitalism of America. It suits them very much, because if you have different culture, different rituals, different traditions, then it's too much of load on marketing, because then they have to address thousands and millions of target audience. So make everything uniform. I'm a marketing student. I have practiced only marketing, so I understand a little bit of marketing. Trust me. This is exactly how it works. Make everything standard. Standardization and uniformity. These two things are actually destroying the world. And which is why you will find whichever country you go to, people are very concerned about their culture. I personally believe that we should have lots and lots of cultures and rituals and traditions. We should respect them. We should let them help them evolve. We should help them cultivate. Because that is the beauty of humanity. Diversity. So number one, diversity. We should focus on diversity wherever Kashmiri Pandits go. Instead of talking about victimhood, I think it's time for them to spread the story of their success. This is perhaps the only ethnic community in the world which is the most educated community. Almost 100% Kashmiri Pandits are not just educated like BA or MA or this thing, they are highly qualified people. They never picked up guns. And it's the greatest of the opportunities today for Kashmiri diaspora to tell the world, to show and tell them about their success story, how they did not retaliate. In fact, just to tell you, when we were researching, I researched a lot to find wherever there is terrorism in societies, mostly if you see the terrorism in the Middle East, there is a lot of hate literature. In conflict zones, a lot of hate literature is available. Kashmir is the only place where there is not even one hate essay or article by Kashmiri Pandits or Hindus. It's a very strange phenomenon in modern world. You can't believe it. But that's the beauty, and it could have been possible only to come out of a land which professed the theory of oneness and education. So that's number one. Instead of victimhood, let's focus on the success stories. All the young Kashmiri Pandit children I meet, they are singers, they are thinkers, they are writers, and which is a great sign. Instead of regular jobs like chartered accountants and engineers and doctors, they are exploring and they are walking on the path of Saraswati, which is called education or Vidya or whatever you want to call it. Second thing I want to impress upon is it's very important that we slowly accept that actually left and right divide, what we want to call it, whatever we want to call it, is a fake narrative. It's an illusion which has been created. Actually, it is impossible for anybody to be absolute left or absolute right unless you are a professional activist. Nobody in this world can live your life. You can be economically right or economically left, culturally left, right. You will find lots of contradictions in your own life if you sit down and think seriously. It's the most bogus, the world's most bogus argument, left and right. Another bogus argument is liberal and conservative. Everybody is conservative and everybody is liberal. And what can be more pathetic than somebody calling himself or herself liberal, saying, I am liberal. You act like liberal people. And what is liberal? All of us are liberal in some way. Aren't we sitting here, you are listening to me? This is a liberal way. So let's not look at the fundamental concepts of life from this left, right, liberal, conservative. We should now focus more on humanity versus inhumanity kind of a thinking. Anything which lets you survive, lets you grow, gives you scope to think freely, this is it, let's not complicate life, this is humanity. Anybody who tells you your way is a wrong way is inhumanity. It's as simple as that. Third thing is, we Kashmiris, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, whoever you are, whichever nationality you are, I think together, even in group of 50s, in group of 5, in group of 100,000, whatever number of groups, whenever we collect together, we must keep reminding ourselves that the modern world should have zero tolerance to violence. Violence against other human beings, violence against communities, violence against women or the weaker people. Every majority is minority somewhere. And every minority is majority somewhere. We should, in black and white, think in terms of being humans and being inhumans. This is all I have understood and learned in last 12 years of my journey, which started to seek truth. And as you know, India is a land of seekers, and I am perhaps the senior most student in this campus here, standing here. I'm always learning, and I would go back and sit there, and I would like to learn from you guys what you think about this. I'm here only to convey the message of peace, harmony, humanity, and above all, oneness. Thank you very much.